Grief is such an overpowering emotion, especially after losing someone so close to you. It can take months, years, even decades to get back to normal, if that's even possible after experiencing a significant loss. This podcast was created to help you move through and release the emotions, allowing you to heal the hurt and begin living again. Listen in as I chat with medical professionals, grief workers, and people who have first-hand experience in losing a loved one, what their experience has been, and what they did to help heal themselves and those around them. Life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, but I believe there is always a silver lining if you're willing to look. Welcome to the Release Podcast. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Release Grief Podcast. I'm your host, Faith Sage, and today I have the absolute and utmost pleasure to welcome in Stacey Stockford. She is from Strive to Thrive. She's also got quite a story about her father. Here today, gone tomorrow type of situation. She's left a narcissistic abuser. She's done the shit. So welcome, Stacey. Thank you so much for being on this podcast and sharing your story and helping those that might be just listening and watching and not quite ready yet to jump all in. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Faith. Thank you so much. Been following you for a while. Loved reading your posts and following along. And I know I've chimed in lots with you. And I just don't even know exactly where we connected or how we found each other on the online space, but that's the beauty. That's the beauty. I want to add to, I'm in Canada. Like, this is the other thing as well. The beauty of being online, being able to touch people with our stories. This is so great. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
You are welcome. Yeah, we're almost neighbors. She lives in Canada, just a little bit northwestern of me. And it's kind of interesting. I was mentioning to her offline here about potentially doing some meetups in different cities, whatever, because I like to travel and I think it'd be kind of cool. So maybe look for something like that to happen and pop up in a city near you.
Exactly. I think it would be great. I think you would, I think all your, you'd probably realize if you announce that you have more followers that all over the place that are very widespread.
Oh, I'm sure. You're right. Because thankfully with the online space, we are able to connect with more people than we ever would have, pre-internet days. So I find it fascinating to see where everyone does come from. And as I've been on this journey, I've noticed that people have a theme for their lives, like I mentioned it. I've mentioned it multiple times before. Like we go from one grief episode to another grief episode to another. It all compounds and stuff. But if we never pull back the layers and we never actually like discuss our grief and talk about it, then we're just bottling it all up and eventually it'll blow. Eventually it will come out.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that statement anymore.
So tell me about your father. You had told me before that it was about 24 years ago you lost him, and it was
Yeah.
like here today, gone tomorrow type of thing. Tell me about that.
So when I was 15 years old, May 8th, 1999, it
Mm.
was a clear day, beautiful day. My dad's was a truck driver. My dad and my brother were together that day. They were trucking together. My little brother, he was like around 9, I think at the time. 8 or yeah, around 9. I can't remember exactly how old he was, but anyway, that's regardless. Young. And my mom and my sister and I had gone to town for groceries. So I grew up in a small town back east in New Brunswick, and going to town for groceries was the thing that you do on Saturday morning because you're literally at least half an hour or more away from a grocery store, right? So that's what we had done. And that particular day we had gone and mom and dad had talked before we left. And dad just said, it's a beautiful day. We're just on our way home. I'll meet you back at the house. Mom says, okay, no problem. Like we had ham in the oven, or in the slow cooker or something. Like we were having a ham dinner that night. And off we go in dad's truck, in his half done work, half done. But we didn't take our cell phone that day. So we only had this was before cell phones were huge too. So we have to like preface that. East
Yeah.
Coast, cell phones weren't big. We were really kind of country bumpkin family, trucker family. Um, and we took off and went to town, never even thought anything of it. So then we're coming back through town, and we drive by my dad's like best friend's house, and then all of a sudden we're like turning around and we're like, Mom, like he's behind us, like freaking out. Like he needs us to pull over. Like I don't know what's going on here, but there's
Wait, who
something
was behind you?
like my dad's best friend.
Oh, he was
So
behind you. Okay.
so we drove like we drove by his house and he seen our vehicle
Oh,
drive
I
by.
see. Okay.
So he seen us drive by in the truck and he knew it was us, and then he jumped in his vehicle and came and flagged us down
Oh.
because it was all over town that my brother and my dad had been in this accident, but nobody knew the state of anything. So he
Mm.
pulls us over, gets us, and I was like, Mom, you got to pull over. Like, Rodney wants us to stop. Like, he's like flashing his lights and he's waving at us. Like, because at first she just thought he was being silly. Like, she just thought he
Mhm.
was being him. And so we're just like, what are you doing? Like, at first we're just kind of like, blown it off like he's just being a goof, right?
Yeah.
Not, but then I'm like, Mom, no, like he followed us for quite a distance, like probably 10 kilometers. And I'm like, Mom, like, no, he's not joking. Like he needs something. Like there's something going on. So we pull off and he says my mom's name, and he says, John and Jonathan have been in an accident. Like
Mm.
the company is trying to reach you. Nobody could reach you. Like you like let so my sister was 17, I was 15, and my brother was like 9, 10. And my sister had her license, so she jumped in the truck. Like she took over from mom driving. Mom jumped
Yeah.
in with dad's best friend, and then we went home. Well, we get to the house, and of course, like there's been calls off the hook. Like there's everyone's trying to reach us. The whole countryside is trying to reach us and tell us that this has happened, right? So then I will never forget this. This shrill is ingrained in my brain. And the dent is still on our kitchen table that my mother has today. She called the hospital, and the hospital, she asked, the status and all of those things, and they kept talking about my brother. So they kept saying he's fine, he's banged up, he's got some scratches, he's fine. He's alone right now. Or no, sorry, he didn't end up being alone. There happened to be another um truck driver that was right behind my dad working for the same company. And this is, again, we need to remember, like, this is a road my dad had been on umpteen dozen times.
Was your father a over the road truck driver? Or was
Yes,
it like
yes,
local? Okay, so he was coming home from a trip
yes,
that he had been
yes,
on previously with your brother.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
perfect. Okay.
So this particular trip was pretty local. However, my dad, my whole entire life was an over the road trucker, and
Okay.
only about maybe the last 5 years of his life had he been hauling logs.
Okay.
So in the woods hauling logs. So he was home a lot more. Not always every night, but I would have to say probably 3 to 4 times during the week he would be home at night.
Okay.
So it was only like the last 5 years of his life that I really started to get to know my dad. Because
Right.
before then he was a very long haul trucker,
Yes.
like to the point where he wasn't even present when my brother was born. Like
Right.
my brother was 3 weeks old before my dad made it home to meet him,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So that is actually a very good question, because it does lead into a lot of how our family connected, and then also how over these last 24 years we've ended up to where we are now.
Sure.
So we get home and mom calls the hospital, and they're talking about my brother and all about my brother, and then they kept saying, and my husband. Like she kept saying, and my husband, and my husband. Like, where's my husband? Okay, somebody needs to tell me what is wrong with my husband. Like, is he safe? Is he good? And the doctor didn't even so much as ask if she had anybody with her.
Oh no.
So back east, like there was no police officer. I mean, she did have people with her. Like my aunt had gone there. Like we lived on a road that I had an uncle, an aunt, and my grandparents all, like you could throw a rock and hit them close.
Sure.
So like our road was a family road, right? So the doctor said, "Well, I'm sorry, Mrs. Stockford, your husband didn't make it."
Mm.
and this shrill, like, I mean, Faith, when I say shrill, it still rings. Like when I say those words and I remember that, I still remember that. And the drop of the phone. She dropped the phone. There's a dent on the table.
Mhm.
Um,
And how
and my
long have your parents been married? Up to
uh
this point,
15 years
15 years. Okay.
together. Well, my sister was 17, so probably together 18 or 19 years.
Okay. That's quite a while.
Right? So, and they were just getting to the sweet spot in life too. So
Yeah.
that's like the bittersweet thing about this. Like they were 38 years old.
Mhm.
They were both 38, like same age. They were getting to the point where my sister and I were old enough to go home from school. They didn't have to worry about so much about babysitter. My
Right.
brother came home with us. We took care of him, you know, those kind of things. So so they were just getting able to be able to go out on date nights and not have to worry about what the kids were going to do. Um, and to just enjoy us and and my dad was really enjoying us. Like people who remember dad will say to me, your father, when he spoke about your mom especially, would just glow. And like you look back at their wedding pictures and you look back at
Yeah.
pictures and it was very relevant of that. Um, so we definitely grew up in a family that knew tragedy though. And from early my younger years, like probably late 80s, my dad was diagnosed with a lung disease.
Oh.
So then there was a time where he was in the hospital for a while. We really didn't know work wise what he was going to be able to do and all of those things. Like I just vaguely remember this because I was so young. And then we were in Ontario at the time. And then my dad decided after that he wanted us to be close to family in the event that something was ever to happen to him.
Mhm.
Okay. Because from that, like, and my mom has told me this since, but from a very young age of like my sister being born, my dad always prepared my mom and said, Pauline, be ready. You're going to raise these kids by yourself.
Hmm.
And dad and mom used to say, what are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? You're fine. Like, what are you talking about? And he said, no, I just know that I'm not going to be around to see these kids grow up. I don't know what, but he always used to say that. And my mom has told me that since that he always said, you're going to raise these kids alone.
Oh, wow. I just want to pause there because that is extremely profound. Um, that he would even have this and know this, like listening to the subconscious or listening to the signs around him or whatever he was listening to, he paid attention to it. Not everybody does pay attention to that. Not everybody listens to that. Not everybody understands that. And for him to be telling your mom this multiple times throughout their marriage, their relationships and stuff like that, um, that's pretty profound.
Right. So and then I will say this, when my parents first met, my dad was not a truck driver. He was a manager of a sod farm actually in Alberta. So when they met and first started their relationship, he was home, so that wasn't part of it. So I mean, when he started to say that, that would never be part of it, that we would lose him in a tragic truck accident,
Well,
right?
I think that usually you don't know ahead of time. You just have a feeling like
Yep.
I've had feelings my entire life, and once I hit the destination or wherever I needed to be at, those feelings went away, and they were replaced with different ones. So, like, almost like premonitions,
Yep.
that you would know, but you don't know, like, exactly what this is or what it's for. Like, I've always known from a young age that I was meant for something more. I was meant for something more. And now I'm not sure, like, if my journey that I'm on right now is that something, but my premonitions have went away. So it's almost like I have arrived at where I needed to be at to be able to go forth and do those things.
Absolutely.
Pretty
I totally
interesting.
agree with you. So then we had that. So we had dad always saying that from the time that we were born to my dad getting sick in the late 80s, early 90s. I think it was like 89 or 90. He got sick with sarcoidosis, which they didn't know if that was going to be so life crippling that he wouldn't work again, because that is a disease of the lungs that
Right.
overtakes your lung. And
Okay.
it didn't cripple his life, but he did only have one functioning lung.
Okay.
So he had a limit, like he would be short of breath and he'd have to, but my dad was like this larger than life, like go all the time. That didn't stop him. Never stopped him at all. He was like, envision this. He's 6'2", shoulders as wide as a brick shit house, like literally.
Yeah.
And you just didn't mess with him. Like
No,
he
he
was.
sounded like a larger than life gentleman.
So
Yes.
when my dad walked into the room,
Head
people,
turned, I would imagine.
exactly. And I will say this, if you got on the wrong side of my dad,
Mm.
there was no turning back. My dad would give you the grace and the glory and the shirt off his back. But the
You got
moment
one shot.
you got one shot, yeah. And he was not he wouldn't, if you turned on him or if you crossed him, watch out. Like he would tell you immediately, and the forgiveness, if it ever happened, would take forever.
Oh my gosh, he sounds just like my father. Although my father was not no 6'2", but he was definitely built like a brick shit house, and he was an over the road trucker for a good portion of my adult life before he passed away in '05.
Wow. See,
Yeah.
and that's
So,
kind of ironic that we connect on that. And like, that's kind of what this story
yeah,
comes from, right? I truly
absolutely.
believe in divine intervention in that, I don't know, on whatever you pray to or what, I am a very faith-based. I'm learning to be a Christian, learning to walk like Jesus. And I totally believe there's no mistakes in people crossing paths.
No, no. I believe people are put in front of us for a reason, a season, or a time. But we learn something from everyone we cross paths with, no matter what
Yes.
it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
how did your father pass? Like, was it an
So
accident or was it like
no, it was a fluke, complete fluke accident. Nobody even really, even the investigation of the accident, it was very uncommon. So my dad had a brand new 1999 chocolate brown Western Star truck with a cab, like, a good cab. He finally,
on it and
like when he
everything?
first bought his truck, when he first bought a truck to go log in the woods. So if you know trucks, you'll know understand this a little bit. He had this big old green machine, we called it. It was so high off the ground that us kids, like the bumper was the top of our heads, at that time. So he had that. And I mean, he might have bought that when I was like 12 or 13, that he bought that truck. And like you literally climbed, like you were climbing into that truck. And there was no sleeper on it. And there
Okay.
was just a bench seat. So if he was, you know, if he was staying out in the woods, like he didn't have a good sleep and all this stuff. So
Mhm.
finally, when he got to a point, like this was just the point, Faith, like this is the thing. Live your life, and this is a big thing. Live your life like you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And this is what my dad taught me, because he bought that truck in February of 99, brand new truck. And when we made the decision as a family, we all had to make this decision. It was funny. Here we are. There was a Freightliner, a Kenworth, and a Western Star, and probably a Peterbilt too. Can't remember. All in the yard, and we were all standing there in the yard in the middle of February in Canada,
Oh my gosh.
freezing cold, all
Yes.
trying to pick out what truck was going to suit this yard the best. And that's all he cared about. He was like,
Putting this yard the best. I love that. It's the
what
little
truck?
decisions, little
It
ones.
is. Yeah. What truck is going to look the best in this yard? Okay. Can all five of us fit in the truck? And my mom would be like, we aren't all five of us going in this truck. He said, I don't care. He's like,
Doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter. Even if we only go once, all five of us in
If
this
we
truck.
just go to buy a gallon of milk down the road at the store, we can all pile in here and go. I love
Exactly.
it.
Exactly. So that's like what my dad was all about, right? So he just bought the truck. The truck was brand new. But he was coming down a hill that had like a 90-degree turn. And it's a
Oh,
road that probably, I don't even know if today if they've ever fixed it, but it has been a fatality corner for a long time. Many people have unfortunately passed on that corner.
yeah.
So something happened that day, but that truck, Faith, went from its wheels to its roof.
Oh,
Because when we seen it about 3 or 4 months, well, Dad died in May and we seen the truck. We found it in a junkyard in October, I think, or September, October. So
wow.
that fall, we finally seen the truck. And the cab and the whole truck was literally just like it was lifted up and put onto the fifth wheel. The tires didn't have a single scuff on it. The tanks weren't scuffed. The doors weren't like nothing. It was like the truck came and went airborne on its roof, slid back.
Wow.
So my brother, so my brother's story initially when he came home, he doesn't remember this now, but this is what trauma does to us. We
Yeah.
block those things out. But the story that he told us when he came home was they were coming down over this hill, and mom had literally just got off the phone with dad, like 7 minutes. When she looked at the phone bill to the time of death, was like 7 minutes, like so close. Had she stayed on the phone, she would have heard the whole entire thing.
Wow.
So that's also the timeline of how long it took for somebody to track us down, because we didn't have the cell phone with us.
Yeah.
So it was like over like 2 hours probably by the time that they tracked us down. Anyway, my brother got tousled around because he didn't get a seatbelt buckled. And my dad had said to him he could feel the truck going over, and he told him to buckle up. But my brother didn't get his latched. My dad got his latched. Now, to say that that was a cause,
Right.
I don't know. Would he be here today had he not latched? Who knows? That's not, nobody will ever know that. But
Right.
the bar, like on the outside of the truck that you would kind of help yourself up with, had let go and came in the window and kind of trapped him. They said that it trapped him across his
Yeah.
chest. So where he only had one functioning lung, it immediately stopped his heart. It pinned him and stopped the
Okay.
oxygen to his heart. So that is that was like the autopsy cause of death kind of thing. However, so here we are. My mom is 38 years old. My dad had just bought a truck. He had, even in the yard, had a not brand new, but a new to us. And I say us because we were a family in this business. Even at 15, I knew that that's how we thought. In the yard was a trailer with a loader on it, because he wanted to be able to go to the woods and load his own loads and not have to wait on loaders to slow him down, right?
Right.
He hadn't even, because it being the spring of the year in
Yeah.
Canada, you don't truck in the spring of the year. It's too muddy. It's too gross. Like, so it's called spring breakup. So he would haul for another company. So his truck was still working, but he hauled fertilizer for a different company during this time. So that's what he was doing. The trailer that he was hauling was not his trailer. It was a contracted, however they worked it out, situation. So here it was. My parents were 38 years old, just bought a new truck, just bought a trailer that was going to make him be able to be more successful and more control of his time and everything. And now my mom is faced with her husband gone. And her son, like my brother, was 3 hours away. Like, we couldn't even get to him quick
Oh, at
enough
the
to pick him
hospital.
up, because the hospital, yes, they were like 3 hours away from us. So the hospital was 3 hours away. And I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but there was another trucker that was behind my dad, and that truck driver and his wife actually went with my brother to the hospital and stayed until somebody got there. So he wasn't 1,000% alone. However, these people had such kind souls that they were with him, and they seen the immediate aftermath of the shock my brother didn't know my dad was gone until he came home, because he kept asking to see dad, but we
Probably kept
just,
them separated.
yeah, they just kept lying to him and tell him, well, he's in surgery. And my mom had to talk him into coming, because he didn't want to leave. Like, my brother, I'm not leaving. Like, dad's here. I'm not leaving. And mom said, come home and we'll go and see dad after. Like, dad is in surgery. Come home. I just need you to come home. Come home. Well, my dad's oldest sister, who, thank heavens, is a trained psychologist, was 4 hours away, but she was going to be passing right by this hospital in this town. So she picked my brother up. Her and my uncle picked my brother up, and that's how my brother got home. So he gets home and we go through all the rigor, like everything, funeral, all of those things. Of course, my parents did not have a will. So if you don't have a will, everything gets shut down. My mom had nothing. Even though my dad always said that we were, like, she'd be raising us alone and all that. Like, she just, I guess I don't know why that kind of got oversighted on it, that didn't happen. So anyway, she had to deal with.
Daunting task. That's a big task to be And a lot of people always think, well, I have time, I have time, I have time. And the reality of the situation is nobody's guaranteed time. Like we could, I
Exactly.
could, I could pass away on this call with us right now. Like it, and we'd be done. There's no more time. We only have so many breaths and so many exhales. That's it.
Exactly. Exactly. So that was in 99. And then as we kind of go forward, my mom was so grief stricken. My sister graduated high school the following month. So my dad saying he was never going to see us grow up is just like, when you think about it, it's just like, wow, you really knew. And later on down the road, my grandparents had told me this. My dad's parents, who lived just up the road, my grandfather was a self-ordained minister, so religion was a big part of their life. And the very last photograph that was taken of my dad was in their yard because he was so proud to go and show my grandpa this truck. And like, my grandpa was a bit disabled at that point, had an artificial hip, couldn't walk too great, but my dad was like, no, dad, you're going for a ride in my truck.
Nice.
Like he made sure it happened. Like he got his father up. Like my grandpa's like late 70s at this point, right? Like 75 or better when my dad died. And then so he just made sure of that. And that day, my grandmother said, that day that that picture was taken, your father come into the house and went in, your grandpa was taking a nap, and he laid down and sobbed like a child and said to his father, my grandpa, he said, Dad, I'm just not going to see them. Like, I'm just not going to see them grow up.
Mm.
And he sobbed that he, like, and this was in April-ish, somewhere around like towards the end of April. My dad died May 8th with no, like, at that given time, like, there was no health things that we were aware of, nothing like that. It was such a fluke accident. It was so, like I said, here today, gone tomorrow, like no weather. There was no animals involved. There was no other vehicles. Just so strange. And it's always been like, what happened? And I've had to spend these last 24 years coming to grips to know it's not mine to know.
No, sometimes it's not. And it might be a lesson that, like, that's for someone else, your brother, your sister, your mother, your grampy, someone else along the way. Maybe it's for the company, or maybe it's for the people behind you, or who knows what the signs are, because there's so if you stop and think about your day, from the moment that your eyes wake up and you're conscious to what is happening around you, there are so many factors swirling around in your world until the time your eyes shut at the end of the night and you're unconscious to what's happening around you. Like, there's so many things that happen during the day, when you're awake, when you're conscious to what is around you. It's unfathomable to me. Like, I was telling my husband the other day, I said, if people would only stop and realize every day when they wake up, how close to death they are, like, and not even by any, like, major things, but, like, the I don't know, unmajor things, if you will. So, like, "Oh my gosh, that car just missed me. Oh my gosh, XYZ. Oh my gosh, la, la, la. I tripped and I fell." Like, you could potentially hit your head and die right there. Like, so many things that can happen during the day. And I think that we don't realize that how often we avoid death, to
Uh,
be honest.
Absolutely. Totally 1,000% agree with that. So to carry on a little bit more with my story here, after that time, and I've said this multiple times, when my mom was a boomer, like, they were born in the 60s, they were raised in the generation of kind of feelings. You don't talk about feelings, you just don't
No.
talk about it.
No.
And so she is extreme on that, I feel, to a big, and I am a larger than life type personality. I'll talk somebody's ear off. I don't mind sharing my story. I'd love to share it because I know someone else out there needs to hear what I have to say. But my mom is totally not that. So
Mhm.
the rest of my teenage years up until literally a year ago, like 39 years old before I finally clued into this kind of stuff, I was the challenge to my mom.
Oh,
I'm the middle child
because you had the feelings.
because I had the big feelings, and my brother and sister both turned down a dark, dark path. My sister thankfully has come forward, like come full circle around that. Hopefully, I don't have a relationship with her because we're just so different. But my brother is still in a very dark path.
Mm.
So him being my mom being the one that you don't talk about feelings, you just brush it under the rug and you move forward has not helped our
Wow.
family dynamics at all because none of us took time for a lot of years to grieve until we realized it on our own. So we didn't have somebody to coach us through it. We had some counseling, not going to lie. We had a beautiful counselor for a short period of time. Well, the insurance covered the counseling, but after that, that was it.
Right.
So we really were left on our whim. And for myself, being the middle child, and I was the one who stayed sober and kept the sober line going. So everything that I went through, like I didn't turn to drugs, I didn't turn to alcohol, I wasn't prescribed anything, like nothing. So my poor mom, I will honestly give her the most grace, and I'm so grateful for my mom, but I will give her the most grace in the first probably year and a half after my dad died. The poor doctors had her so hopped up
Yeah.
on just pharmaceuticals to deal. So she wasn't feeling like she was dead. I've always said this.
Yeah.
When my dad died, my mother died.
Yeah.
She stopped. She just didn't know what to do. And coming from a background and a family, you just don't talk about things. She did not. She didn't know how to talk to us. She still to this day, 24 years later, if I talk to my mom and I get on the topic of remembering something about dad, she'll choke up.
Yeah.
She can't talk about it. She can't listen to certain songs. Like she just can't do that. So
Yeah.
I've learned to love her where she's at. However, it's been such a journey of trying to grieve through this and learn it on your own and knowing that it is okay to step away from your immediate family, who you are brought up to believe are
Mhm.
your connection and your support, to reach out to others who can love and support you where you're at. So for
Yeah.
the first 12 years, I was one angry individual.
Absolutely.
I was mad at the world. I would cuss you out like nobody's business in a heartbeat. You looked at me the wrong way and I was going up one side of you and down the other, you know? And in a little town in New Brunswick for like our high school years, in the beginning of my career as a dental assistant, people would see you out in the public. Oh, there's poor John Stockford's kids. Oh, there's John Stockford's wife. Oh, there's his family again. I feel so bad for them.
Right.
And that
Which
is not,
did not foster a great,
no.
healthy atmosphere for that was conducive to be able to help you guys heal through that either. So the community was not the community support was not there either.
Exactly. They thought they were supporting, but again, small town,
Yeah.
less open mindset around that, and they just didn't know what to say. So people don't know what to say, and they
They
just,
still don't know what to say.
yeah, exactly. They kind of just run away from you. So you feel
Yeah.
very isolated. So I remember growing up as a teenager, and I would challenge my mom a lot in regards to how she was raising my brother, or situation my sister was getting into. So it kind of reverse rolled at that point. Um, I would have to say I was in my early 20s and my brother had his first child. Well, let's step back a little bit before then. I was, I think, 17 when my sister, 17 or 18, when my sister had her first child. So I was in like grade 11 or 12, somewhere around there. And she had a child young. She was like 19, 20 years old. And my sister was a party mode person. I
Mhm.
don't get me wrong. She did the best she could with the knowledge that knew at that time. However, I was a big part of raising my niece at that point. Like I would go to school, go to work at the grocery store. I would stop by on the way home from work at 10 o'clock at night, pick my niece up when she was an infant, take her home so my sister could sleep, and
Mhm.
I would do that night shift for my sister and then drop her off in the morning when I would go back to school and, the next morning. So I did a lot of that. So there was that. And then by the time my brother was 18, he had his first child,
Okay.
and mom couldn't get him to stay in school. He didn't
Mhm.
want to stay in school. He just wanted to go to work. He just wanted to drop out and go to work. And mom was trying to get him to graduate high school. Like she was trying to do all these things and he wouldn't. So at this point, I had moved from New Brunswick to Calgary, Alberta. So that is literally across the Canada for people geographically. It's literally east coast to almost the farthest west that you can go. So that's quite a ways. And I was living in Calgary and working at the time. And my mom sends my brother to me and says, "Here you go. Like I just can't take him anymore. You need to take care of him and you need to help, here." But without those words.
Right, right.
It was just I'm shipping your brother to you,
Here's your brother. Help him.
here's your brother, help him find work, and when he's stable enough, we'll get him his own place, and then his girlfriend at the time and son can go out there and they can be a
Okay.
happy loving. So I feel like I was just pushed. My mom didn't know how to deal, so she just gave me my brother and said, "Here, you deal with him." Lo and beknownst to me, I didn't know where his state was at because my mom never told me what was going on with him, really. So I get him, and I didn't even know even then. So that was like 2006. Okay, so fast forward to 2006. I didn't even know what was going on with him then. But here I am, got this 18-year-old kid in my house, me and my fiance at the time, because I was engaged at the time, and we're like, "You got to get out and go to work. Like, we ain't supporting you. Like, hey, this ain't mama's house here. Like, come on." And like the fights that my brother and I would get into, like, we would almost end up in fist fights because I'd be like, "You need to go to work. Like, get up. When you get up, can you please take garbage out? Like, get that garbage out." And he would just argue and fight. Well, so I didn't really think a whole lot of it. And then finally he got out and did his thing and got him working and all of that. And then he found his own place. And then all of a sudden, abruptly, he's moving back east. He's just packing up and leaving again, going back east. And I'm like, "What are you doing? Like, man, what are you doing? There ain't nothing back east. Like, what are you doing? You're going to go and then my big thing was like, what are you going to do? Go drive a truck and then we're going to be losing you too? Like, because that was our big fear, right? But
Right.
even there was no keeping him out of truck. Like, that kid was going to drive truck whether it didn't matter. He could have had the smartest finished freaking degree of doctorate and he was still going to be behind the wheel. It was just his calling.
Facing his own demons.
Exactly. Exactly. So there was that, but there's been a really long line of I was left to fend for myself. And
Right.
every time that something came up, like my brother, or there was one point in time that my sister wasn't doing well, and my mom wanted to send me to my sister's place to help take care of her. Well, my sister and I never got along for years. Like, even as little girls, like, we just didn't. Like, she hated me from the time I was born. And I swear to goodness, she still does today. That's just like we have this love-hate relationship. We love to
Right.
hate each other. Like, I don't know how to explain it other than that. And she wanted to send me. And I said to mom, I'm like, "No." I said, "I am not the mother here. I'm not doing this. You are. Like, you go. She's calling you. She wants you to go and help her through her whatever she's going through. I'm not getting involved anymore." Like, I had really started to remove myself. And this was about 12 years after dad died. This is when I really had my big realization as to what had happened. And it was my starting point of being introduced to life coaching and what life
Yeah.
coaching was and how different that is versus therapy and counseling
Yeah.
and those kind of things.
Much
So
different.
way different, right? So that's when I started to really dive in as to what had happened and what all this was. And of course, over all this time too, I didn't marry that person I was engaged to. And I had just kind of relationship hopped, like one bad relationship into another. Like that first guy was in a relationship with and engaged to um alcoholic, but I was always trying to save him. I was
Yeah.
always trying to save people. What can I do to save people, others, but drowning myself
Yes.
and completely not thinking about who Stacey is, what she wants. Any move I made was for other people
Yeah.
constantly. Like
What you were trained to do.
exactly. And then so bad relationship after bad relationship. Um longest one being 7 years, and that's when I had moved back and forth in all of this time across Canada a couple of different times. The longest I've stayed as an adult is Manitoba, like where I am now, and I'm 10 years here. So I come to Manitoba in 2014, and I ended up meeting this guy in when I was living out east, and he was from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and he convinced me to move to Winnipeg, Manitoba. Well, that relationship almost was the end of Stacey. Like I end up being put into such a mindset and such bad negative thoughts. I thought if he doesn't kill me, I'm gonna end up killing myself. Like literally, if he doesn't do me in, I can't take this anymore. Like I'm gonna do myself in. So
How
here I
long were
was,
you with him?
7 years.
Oh yeah. Man, that's a lot of time. So how did you know that it was time to get out?
Okay, that's a really good question. So in 2019, excuse me, back up, September 2018, ended up bankrupt over $55,000 of
Oh,
choices that I would have never in a million years put myself in alone. Like the financial stuff it was just credit card. It was stupid. It wasn't even a house. It wasn't even a car. It was credit card debt and loan,
yeah.
like line of credit, like just really
Right.
dumb purchases, right? But all because I would be guilted into, well, you don't love me if you don't buy me this, or
Yeah.
well, you don't love me if you don't go on this trip. Oh, and all of that. But I didn't love myself enough to know that that was wrong. But
It's hard
that,
to set boundaries when you're in a relationship like that, because you have to first fill your own cup. And if your cup has been dry for so long, it's easy to take on in these little love bombs or whatever you call them are easy to fill your cup of not worthy substances
exactly,
that evaporate in thin air as soon as they hit the bottom. They're
exactly. To the point where this man used my dad's death and tried to create a narrative around that and around my family that was so false. But I got to this point, and 2018 ended up bankrupt, and if you've ever gone through that journey, it is the most demoralizing, embarrassing journey ever. I never wish on my worst enemy to ever go through that again. It was terrible for me. It was so bad. Lowest of the low I felt. And then I was like, oh my goodness, I'm just going to get to the end of this bankruptcy because we had to file as a family, and he had two kids that we had like fought custody of and all of this. So I had two stepchildren at that point in time that were about
you
11 and
guys were
12.
not married, correct?
No, thank
Okay.
heavens. Thank
Okay.
goodness. And I never had kids with any of these bad relationships. I don't have children at all. So that's a little bit part of a little bit further on down the road. This man actually influenced me highly to have a full hysterectomy because he didn't want any more children. I will say that there was a bit of it there was a health concern, but had I got a second opinion from a different doctor, I probably wouldn't have had a full hysterectomy.
Oh
I
my
would have
goodness.
just had the fibrosis cyst removed, and that would have been it.
Oh wow.
So that
That
was
hold on, because that's a lot right there, because that's your future that he took control of at that point was your future.
yes,
Whether he was in it or not. So he was controlling you. Like right now, he's still controlling your life by that one action.
yeah,
And then a doctor that would actually sign on for this is a whole other story as well, because fibroids can be helped.
yeah,
There's lots of ways, but Wow. That's
So that was May of 2018. May 18th of 2018. And I had canceled this surgery. Like I had gone for my consult in like 2017, fall of 2017, and I'd booked it and canceled like 3 or 4 times, like to the point where the receptionist was like, if you don't follow through with this, we're not going to have you as a patient. Like I felt very,
bullied.
but yes, that's probably the good word, like very, very, very bullied into doing this, because the percentage of cancer that the doctor gave me was extremely low, and there was no real test to show that that was what's going to happen if it didn't go through with
Right.
this or whatever. There wasn't real strong enough evidence. If I think back to it, if I really think back to that time, there wasn't a super strong enough evidence to say that. So this guy had 6 kids of his own already. At that point in time in May of 2008, I only knew about 4. There was 2 others that came out after the fact that were older, and their mother had kept them away from this guy. Like really, he didn't even really know he was their father for quite a long time. Anyway, so this guy was just a complete piece of POS. Like literally,
Shit. I will say
literally.
it for you. He was a piece of shit.
Yes. So I did 7 years of just
Hard
the
time.
mental
You did 7 years
anguish.
of hard time.
Exactly. Totally jailed up. And then 2019 rolled around. I'm like, I just can't do this anymore. Like, I'm losing my mind. He had me to the point where I just didn't believe I didn't trust myself and
Right.
nothing. And like I said, he had this whole narrative around my family that was so false, like so false. And I was believing it because, like, at points, if you've ever dealt with anyone narcissistic, it's really terrible, and they just really play with your mind, and they do it so slow. They do it a
Very
really
manipulative. So they do
oh
it
yeah.
strategically. And I don't know that they do it strategically on their part because I don't think that they um know what they're
That's
doing. They just know that they're not getting the results that they want. So therefore they switch gears and they do this and this and this because it is always 100% about them and only them.
2019, like it was another like really transformational year. But before I get into that detail, I need to back up of 3 more years. I forgot one really integral part. So 2016, July of 2016,
Mhm.
my closest uncle on my mom's side, who had taken that role of dad for me after I lost my dad for all of those years, like kind of, he didn't have any kids, but he was like always was my favorite uncle, and we were always very close. And when I had moved to Alberta in 2005, I had lived with him, and we got pretty close. So in 2016, unfortunately, he committed suicide.
Oh, wow.
So there was some hidden stuff there that we'll never know why, because he was, the true stereotypical case of that, where he didn't show any signs of struggle to anyone, and like the least expected person of that.
Right.
Um, However, the reason I mentioned that before I finish off with that, with the narcissistic relationship part of it, was that funeral, that man I was with would not let me go by myself to
Mm,
that funeral. So that was 2 provinces west of us, and he made me take him with me to go. And then also during the funeral, he wouldn't come to the funeral with me, but during the funeral, he kept texting me the whole entire time to hurry up, that he was leaving and he was going to leave without me. So, had I opened up to my family at that time, there was never going to be a way that I was leaving with him. But I hid a lot of things as per
right.
usual, right? Making it look like everything was rosy. And I thought I was doing a good job at hiding what was going on. But lo and behold, of course, we don't. Everyone around us knows more than we think they know, those kind of things.
Right.
So then 2019 rolled, or 2018 had come, and I ended up bankrupt over ridiculous things. And then 2019, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I have to get out of this. But the bankruptcy was only supposed to be 6 months. So my goal was like, okay, when I hit the 6 month mark, which would have been like, I think April, that's it. I'm out. Like, peace out, buddy. Like, I'm done with all of this. Like, I cannot do this anymore. Well, I had kind of told him along the way, like, I just can't do this anymore. Like, this is not happy for me. I'm terribly like sick. Like, I was pretty sick too at that point. Like, I have diabetes. It was pretty, blood sugars out of whack. Like, just was not feeling well at
Sure.
all. Mental health was declining regularly because of all this. So, um, he in January of 2019 turned around and he had some investments, but the bankruptcy trustee had said for that year, don't touch those investments, because if you do, you're going to have to report that as income, and that's going to make your bankruptcy longer than 9 months. So it originally would have been 9 months. Sorry, yes, it originally would have been 9 months, but then he went behind my back and took out this money,
So
and
much longer.
it made it 18 months to begin with.
Wow, doubled it.
So because he knew that I was, and now thinking about that as I'm like verbalizing this out loud, he knew I was going to leave.
Right.
So that was probably like just another tact of like, there's another thing,
Any
another
way to keep
string.
her to stay.
Yeah, exactly. So then, by I think it was March or April of 2019, I seeked out counseling for myself. So I went, found a counselor that I could go on my lunch hour that he wouldn't find out about. So I paid a counselor until he did find out about it. So he did find out, and then he
How
insisted
long
on
had you been going to the counselor before he found out?
I think a month. Yes, I think I had had 3 or 4 sessions, and then he ended up finding out. And he
How did he
found out,
find out?
well, during bankruptcy, you have to report and you have to provide like a
Okay, where the
monthly
money's
budget
going.
where the money's going. So I had to
Yeah.
write that down.
Hmm.
And he found it, like, he realized it at that point. So then he insisted on, because I had purposely found one that was close to my work I could walk to, take my, and my boss even knew what was going on. Like, my boss at that time was absolutely incredible. He knew what was going on. He was really supportive of it. He didn't like him. He was like, you do need to do whatever you need to do to get away from this man. Like, we're here for you however we can. And if that means that we just give you a little extra time on lunch to get there and back, like, do what you got to do, right? And I was the office manager at this point too, so I had a little bit more flexibility with that because
Right.
I could make it up other ways, right?
Right.
So then when he found out about that, he would come to my office, pick me up, supposed to be on time, never was, and drive me to my appointment. So he would control it. We didn't have 2 vehicles. We only had one vehicle, and it was his vehicle, but I paid for everything. Insurance, gas. He didn't work. Like, this man never held a job steady the whole entire time I was with him. So I supported him plus his 2 teenage kids that we shared 50-50 custody with. So I was like the provider of everything. So then when he did that, what he would do then would be, at the end of my sessions, he knew how long they were. I would text him like when I was coming down to the building, and then he would like play these games, like cat and mouse games of like, oh, well, I'm on this street, come meet me over here. Oh, I'm over here. And he would just constantly move the car just to intentionally make me late again for work. So he would do like really crazy things like that. And then so I put myself, like, I say I really did my exit strategy for leaving that relationship for about a full year before I actually left, almost a full year. So by the time I had started into the counseling and everything, and then in February of 2020, I had, like, he had really just messed around with my head and didn't pick me up from work one day, made me walk in really cold temperatures from the bus stop, got to the house, he locked me out of the house,
Hmm.
wouldn't let me in, like, and his son, who was at that point 12, I think, was like, Dad, let her in, it's cold. And he's on the other side of the door yelling at me and yelling at the kids to not let me in. So that was my wake up call when I finally got in the house. And I was just like, man, I'm not only hurting myself, but now these kids are seeing it. Like, and these kids don't deserve to see this. And they don't deserve any of this. Like, they were amazing. Like, I've said to my current boyfriend, who, I've said to him, like, there could become a time when these kids get older that they come and look for me, because I was an integral
Yeah.
part of their life. I no longer have any communication with them now, but that day I just knew, that was a Thursday night, and I just knew I could not do this anymore. I just couldn't do it. So Friday, like somewhere between that Thursday night and Friday, I packed a bag, and Friday morning I did not take them to school. So Friday morning was going to be their switch off day to go back to their mom. So I knew that they wouldn't see anything that weekend or whatever, because they would be out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. Well, not out of mind, but definitely out of the harm's way.
Sure.
Right. So there was that. And then when I left, like that Friday morning, when he went to take the kids to school, he had the kids come and hug me, and his son, was like 12 at the time, whispered in my ear, and he said, because his dad said, well, you better hug her, because that's the last time you're going to see her. That's probably the last time you're going to see her, because she says she's leaving us and she doesn't love you guys, and la 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 la. Like, he was just like really terrible. He would do that to them all the time,
Yeah.
though. Like, he constantly did those things, but this time he was like really like, well, you better make sure you give her a good hug, because you're never going to see her again. And if anybody knows anything about a dark side of a narcissist, that is extremely scary. And
Yeah.
the point that we were at, I was like, in my head, I was like, over my dead body, you're gonna have to freaking do a whole lot of kicking and screaming, because I thought, oh my gosh, he's gonna take me out.
Yeah.
Like, I was like at the point where I thought he was gonna kill me. I really did. Like, I thought he was gonna do something, go off the deep end and do something. I didn't know what it was gonna be, but that's what I felt. So he said that, and this young Aaron comes and he hugs me, and he says, whispers in my ear, Faith, and he says, Stacey, I know you're a good person. I love you, and I know what Dad says is not true.
Oh.
Like, this kid could see this. So that was kind of my solid ground of, I need to go, because if this kid is seeing this, I need to give these children hopefully a chance to not see these things, and maybe their mom can fight for full custody again.
Right.
So there was that. And then when we talk about grief, and when we talk about loss, like, there was another loss again. So here I had gone all of these years trying to fill a loss, trying to fill that void. And I was finding myself in these terrible, hurtful relationships over and over again, either cheating, like the guys would cheat on me, or they would just use me for, like, basically the whole theory of like use and abuse and screw with your head and those kind of things, right? So 2020 rolls around. I did that. I left. I'm so grateful that I left. I literally feel like that was like God's hand came down on my shoulders and is like, I got you. Just lead with me. Like, walk with me. I've got you. I'll protect you. And it was a very scary month. Like, there was one full month where it was very terrifying, because I was still in the house that we shared, and he wouldn't give me back his key. So I ended up going as far as changing the locks, and at the end of it, I ended up moving, so he didn't know where I was. So the reason that's an integral part of my grief is because I not only had to grieve, I was still grieving, my dad. That's a grief that will never go away. Like, that is something that every holiday, every birthday of his, every Father's Day, it stings.
Every time a truck passes. Yes.
That part for a long time, definitely. But that part now, I'm just like, oh yeah. When I hear a nice truck, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a nice truck. But that's a little bit better now. But yes, for like the first 12 years, it would be and I was from a huge trucking community. Like, that was just, we seen trucks all the time. But in particularly the company that my dad was hauling that trailer for, when I seen those trucks go in the spring of the year,
That would make
because
sense.
because that was like the company he was driving for. Those trucks were
And
always
the time of
are
the
always
year, and it's like very close. Yes, I get that.
that part is always still to this day quite triggering. Um so anyway, but 2020 rolls around, I leave this relationship and I'm like, okay, what next? So I go and I get my own apartment that he doesn't know about, but I'm surrounded by things that I had with him and I only bought because of him. So I go on this huge purge cleanse. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I sold everything, even when it come down to clothing. Like, if I had a pair of socks that I think that he gave me, I got rid of them. Like, that's how bad it was. Like, it was literally like, I need to get rid of anything that when I look at it, I feel that there was so much emotional attachment to that.
Mhm.
But it wasn't good emotional attachment,
No,
obviously.
no,
It was,
no. But that's how he bonded you to him, was the emotions.
yeah. So I got rid of everything and like totally cleansed out as much as I could. There's a few things that I got over that part with, and I'm kind of grateful I didn't get rid of because I had some nice things. I did have some nice
Yeah.
things. There's a couple things that I didn't. But anyway, so then in 2020, then the pandemic hit. So that here we are, like literally a month. I left February 12th and the world shut down March 13th.
Mm-hmm.
So here I was
The
alone.
thing you got out when you did.
Exactly because had I not, I for sure would not be talking to you today. I for sure would not be talking to you today.
Right.
And so here I was completely alone in Winnipeg, Manitoba, which if you know anything about Canada, we are twin sisters to Chicago.
Okay.
So think
I
of,
know
and
Chicago, but I don't know Manitoba.
right, but okay, so if you think of Chicago, think of a street or an area like a neighborhood in Chicago where you would never go because you know that that's the worst of the worst, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's where I lived for 7 years, like in the depths of the worst of where you could
Mm-hmm.
be in this city, and which is totally not me. Like I had no reason to be there, but that's where he wanted to be. And he would say like, "Oh, we have to go to the soup kitchen to eat." Why? Like, why are we going to do this? Well, if you don't want to go do that, you must be but you must be better than everyone. It's like we don't have to do that. Like we have food in the cupboards. Like this is taking away from people that genuinely need it. So it was like just crazy things like that. So that's the environment that I was in for like 7 years. So when I got out, I was alone in the city. I had no family. I had no friends because he had isolated me from having friends. He had isolated me from a lot of my family connections. So I was slowly trying to build that up, but they were not near me.
Right.
No one was near me. So then I still to this day kind of am in awe with myself that I got through that stage the way
Mhm.
that I did. Somehow, some way I did. Then I realized that 3 hours away in a different city, the city I'm in now, just a little bit south of here, where we are, I have a cousin, a distant cousin, who I didn't know was here. She's like my third or fourth cousin. I didn't know she was here. So thankfully, she took me under her wing. Her and her husband kind of helped me through, got me out of that city and got me into a safer spot away from him where he wouldn't know where I was. And he had no idea that I have this person here, nothing like that. So, um, and then, so then I do a bunch of healing, a lot of getting into life coaching.
So, like, talk to me about that bunch of healing portion. So, like, what did you do? Like, were you doing regular counseling? Were you doing like stuff online? Were you reading books, listening to podcasts? What were you doing?
Well, because the world had shut down, I was really grateful for the fact that I was able to do online with the counselor I was seeing for
Mm-hmm.
the world. So she pulled me through a little bit. And then because I had moved out of that city, she had to let me go. But the women's shelter in
Okay.
Winnipeg had an outreach program that I could use. So I would have over the phone sessions. And they also had an emergency line. So if I got into a panic state or dark time and I needed just somewhere to call, they have like an outreach emergency line too, which people I use that a lot. So in the
Sure.
beginning of leaving, like stuff like that, you always it's hard to not want to reach back out to them, right?
Well, right,
So,
because that's the only thing you've known for so long.
yeah.
Not to mention, but it makes you question your sanity if you're doing the right thing.
Yep.
Because you're like, well, was it really as bad as I'm thinking, or was it just not that bad? And I'm just making mountains out of molehills and all, making you questioning your sanity and why you're even doing this in the first place. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So I'm so grateful for that outreach service, but a lot of YouTube, a lot of um podcasting, Brene Brown, Daring
Mhm.
Greatly, that book. I've gone through it twice now since 2021. I really developed my faith, and I'm a part of a Christian ladies group every on Tuesday nights called Pinnacle Forum. So there's 4 ladies in the group, and we come together and share. It's been amazing. The other ladies are more mature in their faith than I am, but I've been able to come around like so much more than what and really feel the belief and really lean into it and find who I am in this.
Right.
So 2021, I then started dating again, and I ended up in another relationship that turned out to be another narcissistic relationship. So 2021, that hopefully thankfully seen the signs quicker and got away in within
Much
like
quicker if it was not that long.
right? Yeah, exactly, like 9 months. So in that time, what I'm petting here is my dog, who's a big suck that's behind me here. But in that time, April of 2021, this pup came into my life. So I seen this ad on Kijiji, and this beautiful puppy comes into my life. And it's just like he was placed in it was just like when I go and I meet this litter of puppies, came in when they say that you get chosen by them, I think you really do. And then this pup was shows me, and then all of a sudden, like a few weeks later, I hear like this. I was just kind of in prayer and meditation. I was still in that relationship at the time, like the second kind of narcissistic relationship. I have to say it wasn't as bad, but definitely didn't help anything for sure.
Right.
It was still lots of very much similarities. But I'm like sitting there with this puppy and I'm training, and then all of a sudden I hear just out of the blue, Stacey, here, love something that's gonna love you back. And I'm
Mm.
just like, I'm like, I just truly believe my dad just sent me there and like said, here, like you can't have kids, you love puppies, you love dogs, like here, this is your dog. So he's kind of my soul dog and my emotional support as well through lots of different things. Um, but yeah, so he'll be almost 2 this year. But the reason that all kind of wraps in together is what I would like people to hear in my story is that there's so many different types of grief. We need to remember it's not only a physical somebody dying that means grief. Grief can mean
Right.
so many things. I not only lost my dad in that, but my I the relationship with my mom has deteriorated over the last 24 years to the point where I've come to realize she's definitely an unemotional, available parent to me. I love her with all my heart. I've tried for like multiple times to like build a relationship, but now I've come to understand that it is okay to just meet her where she's at.
Right.
So, but that's again another loss because I'm losing the thought of what I thought my parents should be for me.
Right.
And then having like same with my siblings, what my thought my sibling relationship would be is not there. And then multiple job losses over the count of time because I did a lot of job hopping because it would either be I would get in fight or flight and leave the province or something would happen and I would just like one little thing would trigger me and be like, okay, I'm done. Like I got to run away from this. I can't handle it. Like
Yep.
everything was run, 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 run. So in 2022, in the fall of 2022, the fall of 2022. Yes. Oh, sorry. It was 2022 when I got my puppy and left. So 2021, So I guess I only dated that fellow for about a year, the second guy that was a narcissistic relationship as well. So about a year. So October 2022 comes along, and my pup here was only 6 months old, and he was just a handful. And like again, it was just like patience and testing my patience. And out of the blue, I just was like, okay, let's try this one online dating thing one more time. Just one more time. Let's try this, right? So I do,
Is
and I
that,
meet,
hold on. Is that how you met the first one? The narcissistic guy the first time?
yes. Yes.
Ah, so online dating.
Yes. Yes.
And then is
And
this
that's how
how,
I missed the second one too.
okay,
I
okay. So
know,
now we're going
right?
into third's the charm, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Third time's the
Okay.
charm. So then go and so I meet my boyfriend now, and again, the reason these are all kind of integral parts is each stage has brought me to where I am now,
Of
but
course.
I have lost a lot along the way. And in June of 2022, I went back east for a visit. Now, mind you, I was still in a relationship with that second guy, and I had gone and met up with my auntie, who's my dad's oldest sister. She'd take me back to the airport that day, and I was talking to her about, where I was in life and how I was feeling and everything. And she literally, and in particularly how my family has been, like how my brother and my mom and my sister and my nieces and everything have been, um since, all of these years, 20 some years later. And she looked at me and gave me the most impactful words. She said to me, "It is okay to accept surrogate parents or family when your biological parents are not emotionally available for you." Like
And this
that.
is the auntie that is the psychologist, right? The licensed
Yes.
therapist, whatever. Perfect. Yes, absolutely. I agree with that.
So, so, yeah. So, I mean, she said that to me, and that because in our conversations, there was things that come out that she couldn't believe that had never been dealt with.
Mhm.
Like she was just like, I thought that things that, I thought your mom was doing better at these things, and had dealt with XYZ and whatnot. Um, and when she said that, that was like my release to realize I don't have to feel guilt or I don't have to grieve as deeply the relationships with my mom and my sister, my brother that aren't there. It's not, it, you know,
I think a lot of it comes down to as well, like we talk about anxiety quite a bit, quite a bit. But a lot of people, I don't think that understand that, like in situations like that, you have high anxiety because you're like, I don't know who to please at this moment. This person, this person, this person, or this person. Yourself is never a thought.
no, not at all.
But
And
who do I please? Yes.
especially
So
not
you
when you're a
have,
people pleasing person.
yes, which is what you tend to become because especially after like say your mom loses her spouse, it's like you want to make it easy and simple for them because they're going through a lot. Yeah, you've lost your father, but like they're going through a lot. Now they're having to parent these three children on their own. How can I be the best version so that I don't cause any issues, right? To make their life easier. So when that happens, you kind of like give your life to
Yeah.
them without even realizing it. And then you're living everything based upon what they're feeling and stuff. And so if mom's not feeling anything, you're continually trying to please and getting nothing in return.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
Exactly. And also what my mom ended up doing as well, like immediately, I shouldn't say immediately, within a year of my dad dying, she was dating.
Mm.
And she's married to that man now, but the beginning of that was very like I hated. Like it
Absolutely, because
I
the stuff hadn't been dealt with.
exactly. And I still and there was like there's infidelity that happened there on his part as well. So to me that was also another big thing. Like here you are, you're 39 years old, you have 3 kids, and you end up with a married man, and then you end up marrying him in the end. However, that's I mean, great, but that was a big hateful thing, because although he would try to kind of parent us, my brother ended up with more of that than I did because he was home with him more.
He was
Um,
younger too.
he was younger, right? And I mean, whatever. If he has a relationship with him, fine, but he's not, you know, uh, I mean, I respect mom's husband. That's what he is. Like, he'll never be stepdad to me. Like, if somebody ever said, "Oh, your stepdad," I quickly correct them. I'm like, no, that's my
Yeah.
dad is my. This is what I said one day to one guy. That somebody said to me, I was at a garage and had my car fixed, and he had called, like, my mom's husband had called to, like, just arrange it. Um, and what was I going with that? Oh, it called to arrange it, and I went to pick up my car after, and this guy says, "Oh, your dad had, like, already called and paid the bill." I literally looked at this guy and I went, "My dad?" I went, "Do you have a direct line to heaven?" And he went, "What?" And I went, "What are you talking about, my dad? Like, my dad's 6 feet under. Like, I don't have no idea what you're talking about, right?" This, like, 10 years later. And this is a small town, a guy who had worked with my dad and was a trucker too. Well, of course he felt awful, and he's like, "Well, this
Right.
person," and I'm like, "No, no." I'm like, "Please never make that mistake again." I'm like, "That's not my dad." "Well, it's your stepdad." And I was like, "No, he's not." I was like,
Yeah.
He's my mom's husband." "Well, he did this XYZ for you." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." So I didn't tell him to do it. I didn't know he was doing it. Like, don't treat me like that. But that was, like, still the anger, right? There's so much anger involved in
Yes.
all these situations. And but I just really want people to understand they're not alone.
No.
They're not. You're not alone, and all of the ups and downs and feelings that you end up with are so normal. And one thing I've always said too is, as you go through it, the tears get fewer. The
Yeah.
tears turn to smiles, and you're able to look at a picture or hear that song or see whatever it could be and smile and remember that person differently.
Absolutely. I agree with that. It takes time. It does take time. I don't think that time heals all wounds,
No.
but I do believe that time can give you an opportunity to understand yourself and to heal yourself,
Yes.
which can in turn make things seem not as big, ugly, and scary anymore,
Yeah,
or as
exactly.
unfathomable or uncrossable or unwhateverable. I do believe in that. Stacey, I have
Absolutely.
had such a blast chatting with you.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
been, I'm always astounded when my guests come on with all of the grief and stuff that they've been through, like all of these obstacles that they've been through, but yet they're still overcoming them and trying to help others, do the same because not everyone gets there. I mean, you have a sister and a brother that's at that point that they have not transitioned into the helping anyone yet, which I'm hoping that they will, but
Me too.
to each their own, right? It's their own
Yeah.
journey and they have to figure it out on their own. But I'm so thankful that you reached out and said yes to be a guest. And
Yeah, absolutely.
before
Thank
we
you.
cut it all off, give me three things um that you believe can help someone else going through what you've been through.
Oh, I think my first one I did when I was really young, like that first year, was journal. I
Okay,
picked up
yes.
a journal and I wrote to my dad every day. Everything
Mhm.
that happened. Everything. Like, I could have had a piece of chocolate cake that day and I told him about it. Like those kind of things. Um, like everything. And then also is really spend time with self.
Yes.
Very much spend time with self, and don't let somebody say, this is the my least favorite thing that people say about grief. "Oh, well, get over it. It's been X amount of years."
Mm.
You can't tell somebody that. Everyone is so different in that. And don't listen when somebody says, "Oh, it's been X amount of years, you should get over it." Oh, why are you so sad over this? Why is this date so this? No, you do you. You do you. If you need to curl up in bed on the anniversary of that person's dying every day for the rest of your life and bawl your eyes out for one day to get through that year of that day, then do it. Don't let anybody tell
Absolutely.
you it's wrong. And something else is just find, if you can't afford the counseling that you think you need or that you feel that you need, that's okay. There's tons of resources. These podcasts like this, look on YouTube, find a book. If you have to read one book 10 times to get the message you need out of it, do it. Do it.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, those were great, 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 great ideas. And I'm going to add a fourth one on there. Find someone that you can trust in and reach out to them. Let them know what's going on. That you
Absolutely.
trust, that's not going to use your words to come back and haunt you, or use them against you or anything like that. Find someone that you trust, reach out and talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But yes, be safe.
Yes.
And thank you so much for listening. And I will see you in the next podcast. Thank you
Sounds
so much,
good.
Stacey, for
Thank
being here.
you.
Oh, before I forget, before we hop off on all this, make sure you follow Stacey on all the social medias. Stacey Stockford on Facebook, Instagram,
Yes, you'll find me on
and
Instagram.
on TikTok. She said she's starting that up. I know she said she's just beginning on there to tell her stories and stuff like that. But find her. All the links for her will be down below, so go ahead and stalk her. Go ahead and look
Yes.
her up and follow her and connect with her on all her social media platforms. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this special episode of Release. All the links plus a few extras are posted in the show notes below. And if you think someone you know could benefit by listening to this episode, please share it with them. And as always, keep going, keep being, keep doing. You are amazing.